Malolele, and welcome back to the channel. This is the Palangi Professor. We're going to be going ahead and starting our second lesson, which is parts of speech, articles, and subject-object pointers. There's a lot here, but it's a good starting point for grammar in Tongan. And I wanted to get the grammar basics down first before we start going into vocab and other things like that. So let's go ahead and take a look. On this page, we're looking at parts of speech. There's a lot here, but we'll go through them each one by one, and then we have an example of a sentence or two and a translation, hopefully so you can see how the sentence structure works in Tongan and how all of this comes together. There are a few words here in the parts of speech that are not technically parts of speech, but they're important enough and used in very commonly in the Tongan language, so they're pretty similar to parts of speech. So we'll go over those as well. We'll get started here. We have the whakaoa'e, which is a pointer to a subject in a sentence that's intransitive, and we will discuss intransitive in a later slide. We have whakaoa'e and then e, which is a pointer to a definitive subject, or the. So the same thing as the first one, but it's just adding a the to it. And then aki is the word with, but it translates best to by the means of. A sentence here would be Te dau alo ki e kolo, aki, ai mea lele. We'll go to the store with the car. There's another word for with that we'll discuss at the middle of this slide, and we'll talk about the difference between aki and the other word. We have a whakaoa'e, which is a future tense marker, which we learned about. It's also used before a numeral. So we have niue nima, which is 5 coconuts. And then it's a pointer to the subject of a transitive sentence, such as Naiwiwi'i esione amele. John called Mary, and I'm missing the whakaoa there before the e, sorry about that. We have ha, which means a or some. This is an indefinite article. We'll talk about that more on the next slide. A sentence is Fuaki kiateia ha meakai, give him some food or give her some food. He is for or the when following prepositions such as ki, e, or me. So yeah, he when it's following preposition is a the in a prepositional phrase, and if it's not following preposition, it usually means for, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We have e, which is a preposition that translates loosely to in, at, or around, inside, and pretty much everything besides from or to. So we have a sentence here, Nane tangoto I loto fale, or I loto fale, he sat down inside the house. It's important to know with prepositions, if it is talking about a noun that is not a person, you use e. If it's for a person that you're talking to, you use ia. And if it's to a pronoun, then you use iate, and this form is followed with all prepositions. Ka is the word but. The sentence here is Oko saia e talo, ka oko fehia ia manioke. I like taro, but I hate tapioca. And then you, ke is you and to, but not as a preposition, but as an infinitive verb phrase, such as I like to cook. So if you're going to say a verb and you like to do that verb, you use ke and not ki, because ki is a preposition. And the best way to think about ki versus ke is the word to is a direction. So if you're thinking about to in a direction to something, you use ki. And if you think about to as like going to do a verb or an action, you use ke. But the preposition to and the direction of, so if you aloki he fale kai, go to the restaurant, you're going in the direction of the restaurant. And then for a person, it's kia. If you're giving something to John, fuaki ia kiate, or kia John. And then kiate is for pronouns. So if you're giving it to them, o fuake mea kai kiate kina tolu. So for a pronoun, any pronoun you use kiate. For any person, use kia. And for any non-person or non-pronoun, you use ki. And this kind of makes sense because if you look at the very first part of speech, nai alo asione, before the subject of a sentence, or even sometimes the object, depending on what's happening, we put an A there. So for a person, it's just gia, that person, to that person. Go is an untranslatable. But it's used to start a sentence or clause without a verb, or when stating a name, which is still technically they consider, if you're just saying your name by itself, they still consider that a clause with no verb. So if somebody asks you what your name is, you wouldn't say Palangi Professor, you would say Ko Palangi Professor. Some people use the to be verb sentence as the way to describe go, and we can go into more depth in that, but it is important to know, which we'll talk about later, that the to be verb does not exist in Tongan. And while it's good to know how to translate those ideas from English into Tongan, it doesn't technically translate that way. We have mo, which is and. It's often combined with bea, so you'll see bea mo, which is just means and, but it's also used as the word with when aki is not used, and it's only used as with when you're talking about other people. So if you're going to the mall or the store with other people, you wouldn't say that you're going by the means of them, you're just traveling with them, so you use mo, and it basically just means and. So I'm going to the store and my sister too, or and with my sister. So it technically just kind of means and in my head, but we translate it to with in English because that's how we're kind of using it in English as well. Ma, which with a whakatoloi over the A to make that A sound longer. This is only used for numbers, but it means and. So hongofulu ma taha is 11, but it's literally the number 10 and the number 1. Literally 10 and 1 meaning 11. Mai is a word for hither, and if you skip 2 down, atu is for thither. These are not concepts that we use a lot in English, but they're very prevalent in Tongan. They'll be in a lot of sentences, but the idea is that mai is anything with an inward action or inward thought, and atu is anything outward. So you'll probably hear a lot like oko ofalahiatu. That's me pushing my love outward to you. That's what it means. Or if you'll even like the word oh my means to bring. It literally just means like to me, bring it to me. We have me, which means from, and literally just means from. This one doesn't have that many weird exceptions. It means from. Mea is for people. Meate is for pronouns, just like the other two prepositions. We have na, which is that, and it's also said as go ena. And then we have ni, which is this, which is go eni. And so if it's na or ni, you can put those at the end of a sentence, which you'll see in the sentences to the right. And you could use go ena or go eni, or just add na or ni to the end of a word to have it mean that or this. Either one is acceptable. O means of and. So we have Fale Osekope, which is the house of Jacob. And then we have Hao Okai, which means come and eat. And so the best way to think about when O would be and is if you're giving a command, 2 commands at once, basically. So you'll see it a lot. Like in the scriptures, Jesus will say, Hao o mui mui yatea, which is come and follow me. So that's the most common times I see O as an and word. There are a few other times as well, but it's not super common. More common to see bea, which is the next word down, which is and sometimes it will be used with bea mo, and then be is or. So let's see what's a good sentence here. Teke hao anai, but teke alo pongpongi. Teke hao pongpongi. So are you gonna come later or are you gonna come tomorrow? You could ask that question. But yeah, it's different than the next word, which is be, which is just the word just. It's not a particle of speech, but it's so common. It's kind of overused potentially, but you'll hear it a lot. So the easiest one to think about is the word saipe. If you know any Tongan, people will ask you fefe hake, and your answer is saipe. Sai means good or okay, and be means just. So I'm just good, just doing good. But it's a very common word in Tongan, so I wanted to put it here to get that process started with looking into that. Let's go ahead and look at the example here of parts of speech and grammar all thrown into one. I'll go ahead and read the 3 sentences and then we'll look at the translation. So it says, Oko o whai e sisu e kakaini, pe mo kakai kotoa pe, ka e hoko hataimi e he kahao, e ui mai e he eiki ke te kita tolo o pe he, hao o moi moi kia te ao, koao koe tui o ngahi tui. So we can translate this down here. We got oku, which is the first word, which is the tense marker, showing that this is the present tense. This isn't some scripture or anything, I just made this up because I tried to fit as many of our concepts into 3 sentences as I could. The whakawa e here is used before the subject, showing that he, sisu, is doing the verb action. Jesus, sisu, loves ofai, this people, kakaini. So remember that in Tongan, I don't think I've gone over this yet, but in Tongan it's very similar to Spanish. The verb or the adjective or the adverb goes after the noun. So instead of saying like red car, you say car red. And so in this they're saying kakaini, but it's this people. And the beamoe, so e here means the. It's an article. We'll go over that in the next the next slide. Beamoe, all people. Kotoape kakai. So again, all is a modifier for the word people, and so it's technically coming first in English, but it would be after it. So kakai kotoape, which is all people. But ka, and then we have the whakawa e is future tense marker. Which is ha taimi, will, and then we're using the tense marker here again to imply or to force that we're using the future tense. Will come, hoko, which means to become or to come into. Yeah, it's the best translation we have for come in this situation. In, the, he, future, kahao. Future, kahao, the, ehe, Lord. So it's important here, you see we're using ehe. That's a transitive pointer for the Lord, eiki, because the verb ui is transitive in the sentence. And it's a bit complicated and there's a lot to go into that, but we'll go into that the next slide. Will, and again we're using the whakawa e here as a tense marker to put the idea of the word will, like the future. Call, ui, to, kiate, us, kitatolu, and, o, se, behe. So here we're using o as an and. It's because it's a ui, an action, and then another action. So ui, call to us and say, come, ha'o, and, o again, follow, moi moi, to, kiate, me, ao, I, goao, am, and here we're using the go because you'll see there's no verb in this sentence. I, goao, am, no word for to be in Tongan is implied. So this am is not really in the sentence. It's literally just I, the king of the kings. But in English, obviously, we have this to be verb, so we're adding it in here. I am the goe, king, doi, of the, oe, so of, and then e is the, kings, ngahi doi. Ngahi is a plural modifier for doi, and we'll go over plurals in the next page. So hopefully this makes some sense. I know it's a lot there. If you go through this on your pause the screen and go through it and try to just line up each word with the translation, it might make some more sense. But hopefully this is a good way to get started. And the best way to learn this stuff is just to practice writing sentences and see if you can get the correct order of the grammar and where everything goes in the sentence correctly. And we can do those in future videos, but let's go to the next slide. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at articles and plurality. So articles in English is the, basically, or a, or some. So let's look at Tongan for that. The definite articles in Tongan are he or e. He is used for the after a preposition. So ihe, in the, kihe, to the, mehe, from the. And then e is used as the definite article the when following ma'a or mo'o, which both mean for. The whakaua a, which is the subject pointer that we talked about first on the first page. Or mo, with, or mo, and. And I realized something as I was writing this, and I had to make some corrections. So I did want to go back to the previous page and talk about this really fast. So I had talked about how mo and bea were combined, and I didn't really understand why sometimes you do add mo to it, but I realized that if you're using bea and the next object of the clause that's after the and needs a definite article, the, to it, or an indefinite article. So anything that would need an article, you need to use mo. So you would never say I don't believe you would ever say, like, let's look at here. So ofa e siso e kakai ni bea e kakai kotope. You would never say that. You would always have to use the mo. Bea moe and the, and you wouldn't say bea ha kakai kotope. It'd be bea mo ha kakai kotope. So if you're going to be using a article after the word and, you need to add mo in. And in the same way, if you're going with somebody to the store or something like that, or not with somebody, but let's say with the dog, you're going to go with the dog to the store, you'd say moe kuli, with the dog, not just mo kuli, moe kuli. So hopefully that makes sense. I updated this here a little bit to explain that, but just wanted to fix that. Let's go ahead and skip forward here. So we have those explanations for the definite article. The indefinite article is ha, which is a or some. There are also emotional articles, ci or cia, which is advanced, and we won't be covering those here. So some examples in some sentences and clauses below. We have alo ki he fale koloa, go to the store, or alo ki ha fale koloa, go to a store. Omai ai hele, bring the knife, or omai ha hele, bring a knife or any knife. Kai ai mea kai, eat the food. Kai ha mea kai, eat some food. But because food is naturally plural, it translates to some. And looking at plurality, in Tongan, nouns don't use an S at the end of them to indicate their plurality. Instead, a word is placed before to indicate its number. There are several words used depending on the type of noun that it is. So we have ongo for two, ongo tangata, two men, ongo kuli, two dogs. We have eua, puha eua, which is literally boxes two, or two boxes. And then we have three or more. We have gao, used for people or nouns denoting people. Fanga for animals, so fangamano is animals. It means many little. When you put it together with fangaki'i, so ki'i means little, fangaki'i is little. If you hear Tongan say fangaki'i, it does sound a little bit weird. It sounds like funky, so it's funki'i, funky. It kind of comes out saying funky, but it's fangaki'i. Also used for animals and family members, fangatoko'ua, or your brothers or sisters. Important thing here, so this might be a bit confusing. If you are a male, your same sibling brothers would be your toko'ua. If your same-sex sibling brothers would be a toko'ua. If you're a female, your same sibling sisters or same-sex sibling sisters would be toko'ua. So your toko'ua is your same-sex sibling. If you're a male, your sisters are your tuofefine, ngahi fanga tuofefine. And if you're a female, your brothers are your tongane or fanga tongane. So it's a bit confusing, but you just learn it over time. And then we have whakawa'u, whakatoloi, with a line over it that makes the u sound a little bit longer. So it's not utohi, it's utohi. It's just a little bit longer sounding, which means the books. This is used for nouns denoting things, usually for small things, but it's very similar and mostly interchangeable with ngahi. And then ngahi is the most common form of a plural modifier. It's used for everything that doesn't fall in the above categories. But the asterisk here is very important. So the difference between ngahi as referring to things and gao as referring to persons is particularly important in cases like the following. Ngahi malanga are sermons, but kau malanga are preachers. Ngahi lotu are religions, but kau lotu are worshippers. Ngahi folau are voyages, but kau folau are voyagers, etc., etc. And then finally, kau mahaki at the end are sick persons, patients, but ngahi mahaki are sicknesses or diseases. Ngahi ako are schools, but kau ako are people that go to school or pupils. So you understand how kau being used for people and denoting people is very important, and ngahi is used for things. That is all that we have for this page. We'll go to the next one. Alright, subject and object pointers and transitive intransitive sentences. So this is, for me, one of the most difficult things to understand, and still, to this day, it's hard to explain, but let's go ahead and take a look. So subject object pointers, we've talked about the whakaua a is a pointer for subject of non-transitive sentences, and it's also the pointer for the object of transitive sentences, and then whakaua is pointer for subject of transitive sentences. Transitive and intransitive is an idea that we have in English, but I don't remember learning about it in school. But it's basically the subject of the sentence is acting on a direct object or transferring the action if it's transitive, hence transitive and transfer. And then intransitive, the subject is acting on an indirect object within a prepositional phrase or no action is being taken, is intransitive. But even if this object is within a prepositional phrase, if the verb is transitive, you would still use transitive pointers. But that's something you just have to learn over time. So we'll go ahead and move forward. The need for this stems from that in Tongan, the order of a sentence has no bearing on its meaning. In English, if you said John saw Mary, this is different than Mary saw John. In Tongan, though, the subject can be at the end of the sentence and the object at the beginning, so pointers are required to indicate which is which. See the example below. Naiwiwi e sione a mele. John called Mary. So we see that John, sione, is before mele. And then naiwiwi a mele e sione. This is literally the exact same thing. John called Mary. So even though mele comes before John now in the sentence, because the pointers are pointing that e sione is the one doing the calling and a mele is the one being called, it doesn't matter what order they come in the sentence. That's how the sentence works. The whakaua a is the direct object. The whakaua e is for the subject. Looking at this a little bit more in depth. As I said before, this is one of the more difficult concepts in Tongan to understand. Most nouns can have a whakaua e added to the end of them that make them a transitive verb, such as ui ui, which is a call or a calling, to wiwi, to call, da, a hit or hiding, to da'i is to hit, lavea is a wound or an injury, lavea'i is to wound. So by adding the whakaua e to a noun, we can make it an action verb. When this is done, correct subject-object pointers must be used. Some verbs are always transitive, though, such as behe, which means like this. It also could mean speak or do something. It's hard to translate, but it's always transitive. And then some are always intransitive, such as lea, to speak or a speech. This is likely always intransitive because you don't speak as an action on anything, only to somebody or about something, which would be a prepositional phrase and not a direct object. Memorizing how to use some verbs will come with time, but it is sort of just a learning thing and listening and kind of understanding, is this subject of this sentence performing an action on something else? And if it is, it should be transitive, but there are always exceptions. Here are some examples. Nai akoi e he whai ako e kau ako. The teacher taught the students. Versus nai ako e kau ako. Nai ako e kau ako. The students studied. E lavea a Viliami, William will get hurt, versus e laveai a Viliami ehele. The knife will hurt William. So one sentence, William is getting hurt, but not by anything. There's no subject taking action on him. Versus the knife, the subject, hurting William in the future. And then okuna manatu ma'oaipe kiateia. They will always remember him. Versus okuna manatoi ia ma'oaipe. They are always remembering him. It's more of a direct action of thinking and remembering being taken directly on the pronoun here, him, rather than a passive remembering in the direction of him. So it's a bit complicated, but that's just how it works. And again, kind of difficult concept, but it's very important as you begin to try to write sentences out and get the correct grammar usage. We have an asterisk here on this page. A lot of times transitive verbs will have the prefix faka before them. Faka 95% of the time means to make, and it's used before a noun or a verb, but usually a noun. So fia fia, which is happy, if you say faka fia fia, that makes it into a verb, which is to make happy. Taha, which is one, if you do faka taha, it means to make one, which translates to our idea of a meeting. To whakataha together is all to come together as one in a meeting. Mole mole is smooth. Whakamole mole is to make smooth. This has been translated to the word for forgiveness, which is the idea of making our relationships either with others or with God smooth again. Tokanga, notice. Whakatokanga is to make a notice or to bring something up as like a warning. But it's more of the noun of the warning. And then whakatokangai is actually to go and warn somebody or about something. So you can see how there are different ways to take a single noun and modify it with prefixes or with the suffix uai to make it into more than it is by itself. And again, all of that will come with time. That is all that we have for this page. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Alright, I wanted to thank you so much for watching. There was a lot that we covered in this video. Feel free to go back and rewatch any parts that were confusing. If you need more clarification on a topic or idea, please leave a comment on the video and I can do a follow-up video. Or, like I said, if we have enough people that are interested in some sort of live class or something like that, we can do that. Potentially something we could work out. But yeah, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you like the content. I'll try to keep making it. Hopefully everything here made sense, and I know it's a lot to take in, but I feel like getting a good foundation of the grammar is important, and then we can go into, down the line a little bit, once the grammar foundation is set, we can go into more of, translating long texts and looking at how the language is put together in a real-world situation. So thank you so much again for watching. I hope everyone have a great day.